Welcome, friends. Marhaba bikum, ahlan wa sahlan. I'm so happy that you guys are with us, that you're studying this material. I'm convinced it will be a blessing to you. God will bless you and help you as you study these important topics. I understand that sometimes the content of the discussions can become very tender or sensitive topics. Please understand, I am never trying to be hurtful or in any way disrespectful to you as I share with you my understanding and my heart of these important topics. It is only my goal to bring to you truth as I understand it and to be a blessing and a help in your life. God bless you, Allah barak fikum, and let's get into our study. صاحبي المسلم، هنا في البداية أحس بأنه واجب علي أن أعطيك واحد إنذار صغير، لأن في برنامجنا نتكلم على بعض مواضيع حساسة، يعني نتناول بعض مواضيع عادة واحد لا يتكلم فيها، ولكن كون على يقين يا صاحبي أنا لا أريد أن أهرج مشاعرك أبدا. أقوم بعملي هذا من محبتي واحترامي لك، وأريد لك الخير فقط. قصدي في هذه الدروس هو فقط للبحث عن الحقيقة، يعني التفتيش عن الحق. في الإنجيل المقدس قال المسيح يسوع بن مريم بركاته علينا: وتعرفون الحق والحق يحرركم. يعني شوف يا صاحبي، طريقة إلى الحرية الروحية باطنية هي التفتيش، البحث عن الحق، وذلك هو العمل الذي نقوم به أنا وإياك هنا في دروسنا. الله يبارك فيك، الله يعطيك الشجاعة، والله يعونك. آمين. Here we look at the first error that I want to bring to your attention from the Quran. It is an error that is scientific in nature. We read in Surat al-Kahf, the 18th chapter, the Surah of the Cave, the 18th chapter of the Quran, starting with verse 83, ayah 83. They will ask thee of Dhul Qarnayn, say, I will recite unto you a remembrance of him. Lo, we made him strong in the land and gave him unto everything a road, and he followed a road, till when he reached the setting place of the sun, he found it setting in a muddy spring, and found a people thereabout. We said, O Dhul Qarnayn, either punish or show them kindness. And of course this is the fundamental problem, what we see in white here on this page. He reached the setting place of the sun. He found it setting in a muddy spring. That's quite obviously scientifically impossible. There's no way that the sun, which is many, many thousands and thousands of times bigger than the earth, there's no way that Dhul Qarnayn found it, the sun, sitting in a muddy spring here on earth. So Muslims try various ways to explain what appears to be an obvious scientific problem. Let's go to the next slide. Here we have two more translations of the same verse, both again by Muslims, as was the previous translation. Muslim translators translating the same verse. Yusuf Ali translates it, until he reached the setting of the sun, he found it set in a spring of murky water. That translation fits very well with the Pickthall translation that we had before. I have on screen here a picture also of Muhammad Muhar Ali's book, the page from his book, Word for Word Meaning of the Quran. And you'll see what he has there as his translation, till when he reached the setting place of the sun. He found it setting in a spring, muddy and murky, and he found near it a people. All three of these translations from Muslim scholars make it very clear that the meaning of the Arabic is that Dhul Qarnayn, who's often considered to be the Islamic name for Alexander the Great, traveled until he found the setting place of the sun, and that was in a muddy spring of water. Scientifically, this is obviously an error. Muslims try to find a way of reconciling that error, and we're going to look at that. Here, we'll analyze the Arabic of the key passage we're looking at. You see it written here below us, حتى إذا بلغ مغرب الشمس ووجدها تغرب في عين حامئة ووجد عندها قوما. The first phrase, حتى إذا, simply means until when. There's no problem with that. The second word, بلغ, is a third-person singular Maldi verb. Maldi meaning past tense. It means he reached, or he got to the point of. He arrived at. What did he arrive at? Well, the next word is maghrib. It is a noun of place, from the root word gharaba, which means, the word maghrib means the setting place of the sun. It's a noun of place. It can be used idiomatically in other ways, but that's its core meaning. Going on in our analysis, we go to the next word, which is a compound word. The word is made up of wajada, which is the third person singular past tense, again the Maldi verb, wajada meaning he found. And it is got attached to it the feminine third person singular pronoun, ha. So the word is wajadaha. He, this means he, meaning Dhul Qarnayn, found her or it, the sun. The sun is in Arabic a feminine noun, and so it would take a feminine pronoun. The next word I want you to notice is taghrubu. That is a feminine third person mudari or present tense verb, and it means she or it is setting. It's going down in the west. In what is it going down? In a muddy spring. Fi, which means in, aynan, which means a spring of water, and then we have the adjective describing that spring, hami'atan. And there are various ways that people understand that word hami'atan. Hami'a could mean murky or even muddy, but in either way, it is not a perfectly clean stream. Okay, it's not perfectly clean spring. That's the Arabic meaning of the passage. And there's really no way around us accepting that this verse of the Quran claims that Dhul Qarnayn found the sun setting in a muddy spring. There are really only three logical ways for us to approach this passage of the Quran. Firstly, we could say that this is meant to be a mere parable. It's not to be taken in a literal or historical sense at all. It's simply a parable. And as such, it has certain fantastic or even mythological components to it, as parables can be figurative, metaphorical. And if we take this to be a mere parable, then we get rid of the problem of it having a very obvious scientific problem. However, if we do that with this passage, it influences how we approach all accounts of history, all historical accounts or efforts at historical accounts in the Quran. There's nothing in the text that says, hey, I'm going to do a parable. So if this is a parable, how would we know what else in the Quran is meant to be taken as a parable or a metaphor? So from the point of view of those of us who are Christians reading this, if the Muslim community tells us, well, this is a parable, then we can relax and say, well, it's a parable, and as such, it contains certain fantastic, mythical, or metaphorical, symbolic language. This problem could be solved by calling the story of Dhul Qarnayn a parable. However, most Muslim commentators do not feel comfortable with that because, of course, it's not represented in any direct way in the Quran as a parable. That leads us to the second possibility. It could just have been really poor communication on the part of Muhammad bin Abdullah, the prophet of Islam. Many commentators, including classical commentators, really add something very important when they read this passage. They read into the passage a phrase like, it seemed or appeared to him that the sun was setting in a muddy pool. They'll often say, well, that's the way it looked to him from his point of view, etc. And if we're going to add those very important phrases to the story, then we do again get rid of the problem. It's fine if we simply say that Muhammad, who was giving this information, made a small error and should have said that he was writing this from the point of view of what Dhul Qarnayn saw or felt he saw. But of course, again, Muslim scholars and commentators really are very uncomfortable to say that this was poor communication on Muhammad's part because they believe that the Quran came by divine revelation. It can have no error or poor communication. It is Arabiyyun Mubayyinun. It's clear Arabic. But actually, in this particular section of the Quran, it's actually pretty poor communication if he meant to say Dhul Qarnayn thought he saw the sun in a pool of muddy water. If that's what he meant, that's what he should have said, and he didn't. Which leads us then also to the third possibility. It may be as simple as this. Muhammad, the prophet of Islam, who gave this these stories to the Muslim community may simply have had a very primitive understanding of science. And so in his mind, in his uneducated and, according to Muslims, illiterate understanding of the world, he simply gave a story that included really terrible science. Now, does this make a person a bad person? Does this mean, oh, what a horrible guy? No. But it does mean that the Qur'an cannot be taken as a book that came by divine inspiration, by direct inspiration from heaven. Because God, if he was going to use a parable, would mark it as a parable. If he was trying to say that this was something that simply appeared to the character in the story, he would have said that. And he would not include scientific error.